The sonar screen showed something that made no sense. Bernard Wright leaned closer, his eyes narrowing at the impossible geometry displayed before him. For 3 years, he had operated scanning equipment on research vessels, mapping the ocean floor in places where sunlight never reached. He knew what rocks looked like. He knew what underwater mountains looked like. He knew what ancient shipwrecks looked like. This was none of those things. Dr. Nguyen. You need to see this, Bernard called out. His voice steady despite the confusion. Churning in his mind, Rachel Nguyen pulled herself away from the microscope where she had been examining bacteria samples collected from the deepest part of the Mariana Trench. The organisms she studied survived in conditions that would kill anything else on Earth. Crushing pressure, total darkness, and near-freezing temperatures were their normal environment. Understanding how they lived could unlock secrets about life itself, maybe even life on other worlds. She crossed the small laboratory space and looked at Bernard's screen. Her scientific training told her to question what she saw. Her instincts told her this would change everything. How deep is that reading? She asked. 34,800 feet. It's sitting right at the bottom of the trench. Rachel studied the image. The object measured nearly 2 kilometers long. Its edges were too straight, too perfect. Nature didn't work that way. Tectonic plates shifted and crumbled. Volcanic rock flowed and hardened in irregular patterns. This structure had right angles. It had symmetry. Could it be a glitch in the sonar? Rachel knew the answer before asking, but she had to eliminate obvious explanations first. I ran diagnostics twice. The equipment is working perfectly. Whatever that is, it's real. Captain Olivia Grant entered the lab, ducking through the low doorway. Years commanding naval vessels had taught her to move efficiently through tight spaces. She carried herself with the quiet authority of someone who had faced dangerous situations and survived through good decisions. What's the situation? Olivia asked. Bernard turned his screen so she could see clearly. We found something on the ocean floor. Something that shouldn't exist. Olivia studied the image for a long moment. Her expression didn't change, but Rachel noticed her fingers drumming once against her leg. It was the only sign of the captain's internal debate. Dr. Tanaka should examine this, Olivia said. Get her up here. Yuki Tanaka arrived within minutes, still wearing the gloves from her work in the geology section. She analyzed rock samples, determined their age, and helped map the Earth's hidden structures beneath the ocean. If anyone could explain this anomaly, it would be her. She examined the sonar readings in silence. Then she pulled up geological survey data of the area, comparing layers of sediment and rock formations. Her frown deepened with each new piece of information she reviewed. This object has been here for a very long time, Yuki finally said. The sediment buildup suggests thousands of years, maybe more. But the metal composition doesn't match anything in our database. The sonar is detecting alloys that shouldn't exist naturally. Metal? Rachel felt her pulse quicken. You're certain? As certain as I can be from these readings. We need visual confirmation. Olivia made her decision quickly. Deploy the ROV. I want cameras on that structure within the hour. The remotely operated vehicle launched from the research vessel Challenger 3 30 minutes later. Its lights pierced through the absolute darkness of the deep ocean as it descended. The pressure at these depths would crush a human body instantly. The ROV was built to withstand it, layers of reinforced materials protecting its delicate instruments. Rachel watched the video feed as the vehicle approached the anomaly. Schools of strange fish scattered from the lights, creatures that had evolved in isolation from the rest of the world. Some were translucent, others glowed with their own bioluminescence. All of them fled from this intrusion into their domain. The sediment cleared and the structure came into view. Rachel stopped breathing for a moment. Behind her, she heard Yuki whisper something in Japanese. Bernard's hands froze on the controls. The surface was smooth, almost polished despite millennia underwater. Panels of dark metal reflected the ROV's lights. Strange symbols covered sections of the hull, not carved but seeming to be part of the material itself. They formed patterns that suggested language, mathematics, or perhaps both. Move along the side, Olivia ordered, her voice tight with controlled emotion. Slowly, the ROV glided parallel to the massive structure. It stretched beyond the reach of the lights, disappearing into the darkness on both ends. This wasn't a natural formation. This wasn't human technology either. Nothing built by human hands looked like this. Bernard guided the vehicle around what might have been the stern. The metal showed damage here, great tears in the hull that spoke of violent trauma. Whatever this craft was, it hadn't landed gently. It had crashed. There! Rachel pointed at the screen. That opening. The entrance stood 10 meters tall, sealed by a door that fit so perfectly into the surrounding structure that they had almost missed it. Symbols clustered around its edges, possibly instructions or warnings. The door showed no signs of corrosion despite the salt water and time. Can we open it? Olivia asked. Not with the ROV, Bernard said. We'd need specialized cutting equipment, or we'd need to figure out the mechanism. Rachel moved closer to the screen, studying the symbols. They were beautiful in their precision, each line and curve deliberate. Someone had made this. Someone intelligent had traveled through space and ended up here, buried at the bottom of Earth's deepest ocean. We need to report this, Yuki said quietly. This is beyond our authority to handle alone. Agreed, Olivia said. But first I want complete documentation. Bernard, map every centimeter of this structure. Rachel, photograph all the symbols you can find. Yuki, collect sediment samples around the crash site. We have 12 hours before we're required to send our daily report. Let's make sure we know exactly what we're telling them. The next 12 hours passed in focused intensity. The ROV made multiple trips, its cameras capturing thousands of images. The structure revealed more mysteries with each pass. Sections that might have been engines, areas that could have been weapons or scientific instruments, all of it built with technology far beyond human capability. Rachel compiled the symbol photographs into a database, looking for patterns. Some symbols repeated, others appeared only once. She wasn't a linguist, but she understood that these markings carried meaning. Someone had written these words expecting them to be read. As their deadline approached, Olivia composed her report. She kept the language factual and precise, describing what they had found without speculation. The decision about what to do next would fall to people with more authority and resources. Rachel stood at the window, looking out at the dark ocean. Somewhere beneath them, 34,000 feet down, lay proof that humanity wasn't alone in the universe. Someone else had built ships and traveled between stars. They had found Earth and crashed here long ago. The question that kept running through her mind was simple but profound. Why had they come? And more importantly, were they running from something or toward something? She didn't know the answer yet. But she knew they were going to find out. Bernard shut down his station and stretched his tired muscles. That's it. Report is sent. Now we wait for instructions. How long do you think before they respond? Yuki asked. Olivia checked her watch. Given what we just told them? I'd say less than 6 hours. They'll want people here immediately. Rachel returned to the sonar display, watching the outline of the alien ship on the screen. It had waited here for thousands of years, keeping its secrets in the cold darkness. Soon those secrets would come to light. She just hoped humanity was ready for what they would discover. 2 helicopters broke through the cloud cover at dawn, their rotors cutting through the humid air above the Pacific Ocean. Rachel watched them approach from the deck of the Challenger 3, her hair whipping around her face in the strong wind. 48 hours had passed since they sent their report. The response had been faster and larger than anyone expected. The first helicopter carried Dr. Adrian Foster, a representative from the United Nations Scientific Committee. Rachel had read his file during the night. He held degrees in physics and international law, a combination that made him perfect for situations exactly like this one. His job was to make sure scientific discoveries didn't start wars between nations. The second helicopter brought security personnel and equipment. Rachel counted 6 people in tactical gear, led by a man who moved with the controlled precision of military training. Lieutenant Paulo Mendez had spent 10 years in special forces before transitioning to security work for international scientific missions. Olivia met them on the landing pad, shaking hands and making introductions. Rachel hung back, letting the formalities play out. She knew how this would go. Adrian would establish authority. Paulo would assess threats. Then, if they were lucky, the real work could begin. Dr. Nguyen. Adrian approached with his hand extended. His grip was firm but not aggressive. I've read your preliminary reports. Impressive work under unusual circumstances. Thank you. We documented everything we could access with the ROV. I'd like to see the footage, all of it. It wasn't a request. They moved to the laboratory where Bernard had set up a viewing station. Adrian watched in silence as the recordings played, showing the alien structure from multiple angles. His expression remained neutral, trained by years of diplomatic work not to reveal his thoughts. When the footage ended, Adrian sat back in his chair. "We need to open it." "That's a significant step," Olivia said carefully. "We don't know what's inside. There could be biological hazards, unstable materials, or automated defense systems, which is why Lieutenant Mendez and his team are here." Adrian gestured to where Paulo stood near the door. "We have containment protocols and decontamination equipment, but we can't learn anything more by just looking at the outside." Rachel understood his position. They had found something extraordinary. Studying it from a distance would only tell them so much. Eventually, someone had to go inside. "There's someone else coming," Adrian continued. "Dr. Amara Johnson, a xenolinguist. She specializes in theoretical alien communication systems. She should arrive within 24 hours. "You already have linguists working on this?" Yuki asked, surprise evident in her voice. "We have people working on every aspect of this discovery. Your find is being taken very seriously at the highest levels." Adrian stood, straightening his jacket. "Now let's discuss how we're going to access that structure." The next day brought Dr. Amara Johnson and enough equipment to support a major operation. The Challenger 3 suddenly felt crowded with additional personnel, supply crates, and sophisticated machinery. Rachel found herself pushed to the edges of what had been her mission. Amara was younger than Rachel expected, maybe 30 years old, with bright eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She had published papers on mathematical communication systems, theoretical frameworks for translating unknown languages, and the cognitive patterns that might be universal across intelligent species. "The symbols are three-dimensional," Amara said, studying Rachel's photographs. "See how the shadows fall? These aren't just carved or painted. They're part of the material structure itself, raised and textured. That suggests the creators had different visual perception than us, possibly seeing into different light spectrums." Rachel found herself liking Amara immediately. The younger woman approached the mystery with enthusiasm rather than fear, seeing possibilities instead of dangers. Paulo and his team prepared specialized cutting equipment designed to work underwater at extreme depths. The tools used focused energy beams that could slice through almost any material. If the door wouldn't open, they would make their own entrance, but Bernard had a different idea. "I think we're overcomplicating this," he said during one of the planning meetings. "That door is designed to open. We just need to figure out the mechanism." "We don't have time for trial and error," Adrian said. "Every hour we delay is another hour that information about this discovery could leak. We need controlled access before the situation becomes chaotic." "Give me 6 hours with the ROV," Bernard insisted. "If I can't figure it out by then, we cut our way in." Olivia backed her crew member. 6 hours won't make a significant difference in the overall timeline. "Let Bernard try." Adrian agreed, though Rachel could see he wasn't happy about the delay. Bernard worked through the afternoon and into the evening. The ROV probed around the door's edges, measuring electromagnetic fields, testing for pressure points, mapping the symbol patterns. Amara worked alongside him, suggesting sequences based on mathematical principles that might be universal. Rachel brought them food that went largely uneaten. She watched Bernard's face cycle through frustration, determination, and sudden excitement. "There," he said, pointing at a sequence of symbols arranged in a spiral pattern. "Those aren't decorative. They're a combination lock based on prime numbers." Amara leaned in. "Show me." Bernard traced the pattern with his finger on the screen. "See how they progress? 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. The sequence continues around the spiral. If we activate them in order..." He maneuvered the ROV's manipulator arm to press against the symbols in sequence. Nothing happened at first. Then, with a grinding sound that carried through the water and the ROV's microphones, the door began to move. It slid sideways into the wall, revealing darkness beyond. The opening stood empty and waiting, like a mouth preparing to speak after thousands of years of silence. Everyone in the lab held their breath. "We're in," Bernard said quietly. The interior space visible through the ROV's lights appeared flooded but structured. They could see walls, corridors, and what might have been equipment mounted in organized patterns. Everything looked ancient but somehow preserved, as if the ocean's destructive power had been held at bay by the alien materials. "There's something else," Bernard said, adjusting the ROV's sensors. The pressure inside is different than outside. Not by much, but it's there. The structure is maintaining some kind of internal environment even after all this time. Impossible, Yuki breathed. The power requirements for that would be enormous. Unless their technology works on principles we don't understand, Amara suggested. Paolo stepped forward. We go in tomorrow. My team first, to secure the area and check for hazards. Then the scientific personnel and protective equipment. Agreed? Everyone nodded. There was no turning back now. That night Rachel couldn't sleep. She stood on deck looking at the stars reflected on the calm ocean surface. Somewhere up there, perhaps around one of those distant points of light, the builders of that ship had once lived. They had developed technology beyond human imagination, traveled across the vast emptiness of space, and ended up crashed at the bottom of Earth's deepest ocean. What had brought them here? What had they hoped to find? And most haunting of all, what had they been running from? She thought about the door sliding open after Bernard and Amara figured out the lock. The aliens had wanted someone to get inside eventually. They had made it possible for another intelligent species to access their ship. That suggested purpose, maybe even hope that someone would find them. Footsteps approached from behind. Amara joined her at the railing, also unable to sleep. Nervous about tomorrow? Rachel asked. Excited? Amara corrected. This is what I've spent my entire career preparing for, even though I never really believed it would happen. First contact, even if it's archaeological contact. It bothers me that they crashed. This wasn't a planned landing. I've been thinking about that too. Amara looked up at the stars. What could force a species with this level of technology to crash? What were they escaping from? Rachel had no answer. Tomorrow they might start finding out. The sun rose on their third day at the site. Paolo and his team made their descent in a specialized submersible designed for extreme depths. Rachel, Amara, Yuki, and Adrian watched the video feed as they approached the open door. The submersible's lights revealed more detail than the ROV had captured. The corridor beyond the entrance stretched into darkness, wide enough for 3 people to walk side by side. The walls showed damage in places, dents and tears that spoke of violence. Entering the structure now, Paolo's voice came through the speakers. Atmosphere inside is still water, but there's definitely something maintaining pressure differentials. Equipment is functioning normally. They moved slowly through the flooded corridor. Strange markings covered the walls at regular intervals, possibly signs or directions. Some areas showed what might have been lighting systems, dark now but still intact. Contact, Paolo said suddenly. I've got something ahead. The lights illuminated a large chamber, and in that chamber, preserved by the cold water and whatever technology the aliens possessed, lay the first of the ship's crew. The alien body floated in the still water, held in place by straps that might have been safety restraints. It was humanoid in basic shape, with a head, torso, and limbs, but the proportions were all wrong. 4 arms instead of 2, skin that showed patterns of what looked like bioluminescent cells now dark and lifeless. My God, Adrian whispered. Rachel stared at the screen, looking at the face of a being from another world. The features were alien but somehow familiar. She could recognize what might have been eyes, a mouth, structures that suggested intelligence and emotion. They had faces, they had names, they had been people, even if not human people. There are more, Paolo reported, moving his lights to show other bodies secured in different parts of the chamber. This looks like it might have been a command center or bridge. I count 7 individuals. Are they preserved enough for study? Adrian asked. They look remarkably intact. The cold and pressure might have prevented normal decay processes. Rachel felt a weight settle on her chest. These beings had died here so far from home. They had crashed on an alien world and spent their final moments in this dark chamber, knowing they had failed whatever mission brought them here. Keep documenting everything, Olivia ordered. We need complete records before we move anything. The exploration continued for hours. The submersible moved through different sections of the ship, revealing more of its secrets. Engineering spaces with machinery that defied understanding. Storage areas holding equipment whose purpose remained mysterious. Living quarters that showed these aliens had needed rest and privacy, suggesting psychology not entirely different from human. And everywhere, they found more bodies. The crew had died at their posts, secured by safety systems that kept them in place even after death. Paolo finally reported, "We've covered about 30% of the accessible areas. There's a lot more to explore, but we should surface and review what we found. As the submersible began its ascent, Amara turned to Rachel. They were trying to tell us something. All those symbols, the mathematical lock on the door. They wanted someone to find this. Then we need to figure out what they were trying to say, Rachel replied. The message from across the stars was waiting. They just had to learn how to read it. Amara's fingers trembled as she touched the holographic interface. 3 weeks had passed since they first entered the alien ship. 3 weeks of careful exploration, documentation, and the slow process of understanding technology that seemed like magic. Now, finally, she had found what might be the ship's central computer. The device sat in a chamber near what they believed was the ship's core. It looked organic and mechanical at the same time, curved surfaces embedded with crystalline structures that pulsed with faint light. The power source, whatever it was, still functioned after thousands of years beneath the ocean. "Are you certain about this?" Adrian asked. He stood behind her in the cramped submersible, watching nervously. "If you trigger the wrong system, we might damage the only record of their civilization." "I'm using the mathematical sequences that have worked on other systems," Amara replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "The aliens built redundancy into everything. They wanted their data preserved." She pressed her hand against the interface panel. Lights flickered in response. Then, with a sound like distant music, the computer awakened. Holographic projections filled the small space around them. Images formed in 3 dimensions, showing scenes and symbols at a dizzying speed. Amara's heart raced as she tried to process the flood of information. "Recording everything," Bernard said from the surface, monitoring their video feed. "Try to slow it down if you can." Amara made gestures through the holographic controls, mimicking the hand positions she had seen in images of the alien crew. The flood of data gradually organized itself into distinct files. She selected one that showed what looked like a ship's log. A figure appeared in the hologram, life-sized and perfect in detail. One of the aliens with 4 arms and skin marked by intricate patterns of dark and light. The being moved, and sounds emerged that might have been speech. The hologram was a recording, a message left by someone long dead. "It's working," Amara breathed. "These are their logs, their personal records." Over the next several hours, they extracted as much data as they could carry on their portable storage devices. The computer seemed eager to share, responding to Amara's attempts at navigation with helpful organization. Whoever designed this system had built it for accessibility, as if expecting others might need to use it someday. Back on the Challenger 3, the team worked through the night translating the logs. The mathematical language principles that Amara had theorized proved correct. The aliens thought in similar patterns to humans, built logic on comparable foundations. Their language was complex but not incomprehensible. The first complete translation came through at 3 in the morning. Rachel read it aloud to the assembled team, her voice breaking at certain passages. "We are the Thoral, travelers and seekers of knowledge. Our world is lost. Our people are scattered across the stars. We came to this world, the 3rd planet from a young yellow star, to deliver a warning. But we failed. Our ship fell from the sky and most of us died in the crash. I am Suresh, medical officer and student of life. I write this knowing I will not survive much longer. To whoever finds this message, please understand what I tell you. The Devourers are coming." Silence filled the lab after Rachel finished reading. No one moved or spoke for several long moments. "Devourers?" Paolo finally asked. "What does that mean?" "There's more," Amara said, pulling up additional files. "Let me find the entries that explain." She worked through the database, selecting logs that seemed most relevant. The story that emerged chilled everyone who heard it. The Thoral had been a peaceful species living on a world they called Thoral Prime. They were scientists and explorers, driven by curiosity about the universe. They had developed space travel slowly, carefully, always putting safety and ethics first. War was unknown in their culture. Violence was rare. They had believed the universe was generally peaceful, populated by civilizations like themselves. They had been wrong. The Devourers arrived at Thoral Prime without warning. At first, the Thoral thought they were facing a natural disaster. Strange machines appeared in their atmosphere, spreading across the sky like a metallic plague. These machines descended to the surface and began consuming everything. They ate plants, stripped soil, drank oceans, and processed all of it into more machines. The Devourers were self-replicating, turning the raw materials of an entire world into copies of themselves. They worked with terrifying efficiency, converting a living planet into a dead husk in a matter of months. The Thorol tried to fight. Their peaceful nature meant they had no weapons, no military, no experience with warfare. They improvised defenses, but nothing worked. The Devourers adapted to every strategy, learning and evolving faster than the Thorol could respond. In desperation, the Thorol loaded their remaining population onto ships and fled. They scattered across space, hoping to find safety among the stars. Some ships carried refugees seeking new homes. Others carried warnings, trying to alert other civilizations about the threat. Suresh's ship was one of the warning vessels. They had detected signs of developing intelligent life on Earth, primitive but promising. The Thorol wanted to warn humanity about the Devourers before it was too late, but their ship had taken damage during the escape from Thorol Prime. Systems failed as they approached Earth. The crew fought to maintain control but ultimately crashed into the ocean. The impact killed most of them instantly. The survivors lasted weeks, maybe months, trying to repair their beacon and complete their mission. They all died before succeeding. This log is dated 12,000 years ago, Yuki said, checking the timeline calculations. That matches the geological evidence from the sediment layers. Adrian paced the small lab, his diplomatic composure cracking. If this is accurate, we're facing a threat that destroyed an advanced alien civilization. A threat that could still be out there. The logs mention a cycle, Amara added, scrolling through more data. The Devourers follow a pattern, consuming worlds along a path through the galaxy. According to the Thorol calculations, they move in 50,000-year cycles. They strip an area clean, then move on to the next region while the previous one slowly recovers. Rachel felt cold despite the warm tropical air.
How long until they come back to this sector?
Amara checked the star charts embedded in the logs. Based on their predicted pattern, we have less than a century, maybe as little as 75 years. That's not enough time, Paolo said. We don't have technology anywhere near what the Thorol possessed, and they couldn't stop these things. How are we supposed to defend Earth? The Thorol left more than just warnings, Bernard interjected. He had been quietly reviewing technical data while the others focused on the logs. There are schematics here, designs for weapons and defensive systems. They're theoretical, never actually built or tested, but they represent the Thorol's best ideas for fighting the Devourers. Adrian stopped pacing. Show me. Bernard brought up holographic displays showing complex machinery. None of them fully understood what they were looking at, but the purposes were clear enough. Energy weapons designed to disrupt the Devourers' replication process. Shields that could protect against their mining beams. Even ships built specifically for combat rather than exploration. The Thorol never had time to build any of this, Bernard explained. They were caught unprepared, but they left the blueprints hoping someone else might use them. They were leaving a legacy, Rachel said softly. She thought about Suresh, dying in the darkness of a crashed ship using her final strength to record messages for strangers. They knew they had failed but hoped we would succeed. Amara pulled up more entries from Suresh's personal logs. These weren't technical reports, but something more intimate. Thoughts and feelings from an alien mind facing death. Rachel read them silently at first, then shared selected passages with the group. I think about my children often. They were on one of the refugee ships heading toward the far edge of the galaxy. I will never know if they survived. I will never hold them again, but I hope they found peace somewhere among the stars. I hope they found a world that could be home. I chose to come on this mission because someone needed to warn the developing species. Someone needed to give them a chance we never had. The third planet shows such promise. The dominant species there are young, aggressive, and adaptable. They hunt and fight and solve problems through force when necessary. We Thorol were perhaps too peaceful, too reluctant to embrace violence even in self-defense. These humans might be different. They might be what the galaxy needs to survive the Devourers. I wish I could meet them. I wish I could tell them in person about the threat coming their way. Instead, I will leave this message and hope they find it in time. To the humans who discover this, please forgive us for bringing this knowledge into your world. You deserve to develop in peace to reach the stars without fear. But the universe is not always kind. Protect yourselves. Protect each other. And if you can, protect the memory of the Thorol. We existed, we loved, we tried to matter. That will have to be enough. The lab fell silent again after Rachel finished reading. Several people were crying quietly, moved by the words of someone who had died 12,000 years before they were born. "There's something else you need to see," Amara said, her voice tight with emotion. She pulled up data from the ship's long-range sensors. When the Thorol crashed, their automated systems continued functioning. The ship has been monitoring space around Earth, passive sensors collecting data. Look at what they recorded 3 months ago. The holographic display showed deep space, stars scattered across the darkness. Then something moved at the edge of the image. It was small, barely visible, but the computer highlighted and enhanced it. A probe. Ancient design, clearly Thorol technology. It was heading toward Earth, transmitting a signal that the ship's computers recognized immediately. "That's a distress beacon," Bernard said. "It's still calling for help after all these thousands of years. And something might hear it," Paolo added grimly. "If the Devourers have any way to track Thorol signals, that beacon is leading them straight to Earth." Adrian made a decision quickly. "We need to go public with this. Not everything, not all at once, but the world's governments need to know we're facing a potential threat. We need to start preparing." "Preparing how?" Yuki asked. "We barely understand the Thorol technology. Building defenses based on their theoretical weapons could take decades." "Then we start now," Rachel said firmly. "The Thorol gave us a gift, the gift of warning. They died trying to protect us. The least we can do is try to protect ourselves." Over the next few days, Adrian coordinated with UN officials and major governments. The information was tightly controlled, shared only with people who had security clearance and the ability to actually do something with it. The public remained unaware for now, though everyone knew that wouldn't last forever. Meanwhile, Bernard and Amara worked on accessing more of the ship's database. They found star charts showing where the Thorol had hidden other technology caches throughout the galaxy. They found educational materials, art, music, and literature from a dead civilization. They found evidence of who the Thorol had been before the Devourers destroyed their world. They had been people. Different from humans in biology, but not in spirit. They had created beauty, sought knowledge, loved their families, and feared death. They had dreamed of a peaceful universe where different species could meet as friends. The Devourers had taken that dream away. Rachel spent hours reading through Sarisha's personal logs. She felt a connection to this long-dead alien, this mother and scientist who had chosen duty over safety. In another life, they might have been colleagues, friends even. Instead, Rachel was reading her dying words and trying to honor her sacrifice. One entry hit particularly hard. "I sealed myself in stasis today. It is my last hope. Perhaps the distress beacon will bring help. Perhaps I can survive until rescue comes. I know the chances are small. The cold might kill me. The stasis pod might fail. Even if it works perfectly, help might never come. But I have to try. Not for myself, but for the mission. If I can survive, I can deliver the warning in person. I can explain the threat properly, answer questions, help the humans understand what they face. So I will sleep and dream of home. I will dream of my children, safe on some distant world. I will dream that my death mattered, that the warning reached Earth in time, that humanity survives what destroyed us. If you're reading this, then I failed to wake up. But perhaps my words will be enough. Perhaps my failure can still become someone else's success. Sleep well, Saresh. You did your best." The entry was dated approximately 3 months after the crash. Rachel checked the ship's manifest of recovered bodies. They had found everyone except one crew member. They had assumed that body was lost, destroyed in the crash, or washed away by the currents. But what if it wasn't? "Amara!" Rachel called out urgently. "The stasis chambers. Did we find them yet?" "There was a section we couldn't access, sealed behind a door we haven't opened." "Why?" Rachel explained her theory. If Suresh had entered stasis, if the pod had somehow maintained power for 12,000 years, if everything had gone perfectly against impossible odds, then maybe, just maybe, she was still alive. It was a small chance. A tiny, desperate hope, but they had to check. The team prepared for another dive into the ship, this time heading for the sealed section. Everyone knew the probability of finding anything but another dead body was minimal. Technology didn't last forever. Power cells died. Systems failed. Life was fragile. But the Thorol had built things to last. Their ship still had power after millennia. Their computer still worked. Their messages still waited to be read. Maybe, against all logic and reason, their stasis system was still functioning too. Rachel suited up for the dive, determined to be there if they found Suresh. She owed that much to the alien who had tried so hard to save her world. The stasis chamber hummed with power that shouldn't exist. Rachel pressed her gloved hand against the viewing panel, peering through the crystalline surface at the figure suspended within. Frost covered the inside of the pod, and through it, she could barely make out the distinctive four-armed form of a Thorol. 6 months had passed since they first discovered the alien ship. 6 months of study, translation, and preparation. Now they faced their most critical moment. Inside this chamber was possibly the last surviving member of an entire species. Life signs are weak but stable, said Dr. Henry Walsh, the medical specialist who had joined their team specifically for this moment. Her metabolism has been slowed to almost nothing. She's been in what we would call extreme hypothermia, but the stasis field has prevented cellular damage. Her? Rachel asked. The Thorol had biological sex differences similar to humans. Based on the physical characteristics visible and the references in Suresh's logs about her children. Yes, she's female by their standards. Adrian stood nearby, looking more nervous than Rachel had ever seen him. The political implications of reviving an alien being were enormous. But they had agreed it was the right thing to do, the only thing to do. Suresh had sacrificed everything trying to warn humanity. They couldn't leave her frozen for another 12,000 years. Medical team is ready, Henry confirmed. We'll warm her slowly, monitor her vital signs constantly, and have resuscitation equipment standing by. But I need to be clear, the chances of successful revival are extremely low. Her biology is alien. We don't fully understand her physiology, and she's been in stasis for longer than human civilization has existed. She knew the risks when she entered the pod, Rachel said quietly. Let's give her the chance she hoped for. The process took 16 hours. They raised the temperature 1 degree at a time, watching as the frost gradually melted from the pod's interior. Thorol biological data from the ship's database guided them, but there were gaps in their knowledge that could only be filled through careful observation. Suresh's skin patterns began to show color as her body warmed. The bioluminescent cells dormant for millennia flickered with faint light. Her breathing, barely detectable at first, became stronger and more regular. Neural activity is increasing, Henry reported, monitoring alien brain patterns that looked strange yet recognizable on his equipment. She's dreaming. Rachel wondered what Suresh dreamed about. Her lost world? Her children? The mission she had failed to complete while awake. At hour 14, Suresh's eyes moved beneath her eyelids. At hour 15, her forehands clenched into fists. At hour 16, her eyes opened. The Thorol looked around in confusion, seeing the medical equipment, the human faces, the strange environment. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out at first. Then she managed to speak, her voice weak but audible. The words were in her own language, but the translation software they had developed from the database converted them instantly. Did you receive the warning in time? Rachel moved closer, speaking slowly and clearly. Yes, we found your message. We know about the Devourers. You succeeded, Suresh. Your mission is complete. The alien's eyes focused on Rachel, and something that might have been relief crossed her face. Then she noticed the medical equipment, the unfamiliar technology, the details that didn't match Thorol design. How long? Suresh asked, fear creeping into her voice. How long was I asleep? Rachel hesitated, then decided honesty was necessary. 12,000 years. The silence that followed was painful. Suresh's face, alien yet expressive, showed shock, then grief, then something like acceptance. She had known it was possible. She had written about it in her logs. But knowing and experiencing were different things. My children, she whispered. My people. They're all gone, aren't they? We don't know, Rachel admitted. We haven't found evidence of other Thorol in this part of the galaxy. But some of your ships escaped. They could have survived, built new homes. We'll help you search if you want. Suresh closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, they held determination alongside the grief. The Devourers. Tell me everything you've learned about their position and timeline. Over the next several weeks, Suresh recovered her strength. The cold and time had taken their toll, but Thorol biology proved remarkably resilient. She walked with difficulty at first. Her muscles atrophied from thousands of years of disuse. Physical therapy, adapted for her four-armed physiology, helped her regain mobility. Rachel spent hours with Suresh each day, building a friendship across the vast gulf of species and time. They discussed science, culture, and the strange paths that had brought them together. Suresh was fascinated by human development, surprised at how quickly humanity had progressed from primitive tools to space exploration. "Your species is so young," Suresh said during one of their conversations. They sat in a room on the Challenger 3 that had been converted into quarters suitable for the Thorol. "The Thorol took millions of years to develop civilization. You've done it in thousands. You're aggressive, competitive, and you solve problems through conflict as often as cooperation." "Is that a criticism?" Rachel asked. "No. An observation." Suresh's skin patterns shifted, a sign of emotional expression Rachel was learning to read. "The Thorol were peaceful. Too peaceful, perhaps. When the Devourers came, we had no concept of total war. No experience with an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with. Your species understands conflict. You've fought each other throughout your entire history. That experience might be what saves you." The conversation was interrupted by Bernard's urgent call. "Rachel, Suresh, you need to see this. We found something in the deep scan data." They made their way to the laboratory where Bernard had set up multiple displays showing sonar mapping of the ocean floor. He pointed to 3 locations marked on the map, all in deep trenches similar to where they had found the first ship. "I used the search parameters from the Thorol database," Bernard explained. "There are 3 more ships hidden in Earth's oceans. They're smaller than this one, probably scout vessels or secondary warning ships. The Thorol didn't put all their hopes in a single mission." Suresh studied the locations, her expression unreadable. "Smart redundancy. If one ship failed, others might succeed. Did they crash as well?" "The data suggests they landed deliberately," Yuki said, joining the discussion. "They're positioned in trenches that would hide them from primitive surface scanning technology. It looks like they were placed there intentionally." "Emergency protocol," Suresh confirmed. "If a ship couldn't complete its mission, it would hide itself and its cargo somewhere the native population couldn't accidentally find it before they were ready. The crews would have entered stasis just as I did, hoping to be discovered by a more advanced civilization. Then there might be more Thorol alive," Rachel said. "You might not be the last of your people." Hope and fear crossed Suresh's face simultaneously. "Or I might find more death." "We should check, but prepare yourself for the worst." The international response to Suresh's revival had been complex. Some governments wanted her quarantined and studied like a laboratory specimen. Others saw her as a source of advanced technology to be exploited. Adrian had fought hard to ensure she was treated as a person with rights rather than as property. Public disclosure was still being debated. The existence of the alien ship couldn't be hidden forever, but revealing the Devourer threat might cause global panic. For now, only a few hundred people knew the full truth. The expedition to locate the other ships began immediately. Resources were pooled from multiple nations, all of them desperate to access more Thorol technology. The Devourers might not arrive for decades, but humanity needed every advantage they could gather. The first ship was located in the Java Trench, 4 miles below the surface. It was smaller than Suresh's vessel, more streamlined and built for speed. The team extracted it carefully, bringing it to the surface for study. They found 2 Thorol in stasis aboard, both still alive after their impossibly long sleep. Suresh wept when she saw them, tears streaming down her face as she spoke to her reawakened people in their native language. They were not her crew, not people she knew personally, but they were Thorol. She was no longer alone. The second ship in the Philippine Trench yielded 1 more survivor. The third, in the Kermadec Trench, had suffered power failure sometime in the distant past. The 3 Thorol aboard had died in their sleep, never knowing if their mission had succeeded. Suresh held a remembrance ceremony for them, human and Thorol alike standing in respect for the dead. Rachel watched as Suresh spoke words in her own language, honoring the sacrifice of those who would never wake again. Now there were 4 Thorol alive on Earth, 4 survivors of a dead civilization, 10,000 light-years from home. They held knowledge that could save humanity or doom it if misused. They represented both hope and a terrible warning. Suresh and her 3 companions began working with human scientists, sharing what they knew about the Devourers and how to fight them. The theoretical weapons in the database became engineering projects. The defensive systems became prototypes. Bernard led the human teams, learning to work with Thorol fabrication technology. It didn't build things the way human manufacturing did. Instead, it grew them using programmed nanomachines that assembled matter at the molecular level. The process was slow but incredibly precise. Their first successful project was a small atmospheric fighter based on Thorol designs, but modified for human pilots. It used hybrid propulsion that combined traditional thrust with gravity manipulation. The result was a craft that could outmaneuver anything in Earth's current arsenals. But there was a problem. Bernard nearly died during the first test flight. The neural interface that connected pilot to ship overwhelmed his nervous system, with information his brain couldn't process fast enough. The ship responded to thoughts, and human thoughts were too chaotic, too undisciplined for the system to interpret correctly. The Thorol had different neurology, Suresh explained after Bernard recovered. Our minds worked in more linear patterns, better suited to direct machine interface. Human consciousness is messier, more creative but less organized. You'll need enhancement to use our technology effectively. Enhancement? Adrian asked carefully. Neural augmentation. Organic computer integration to help your brains process information faster and more efficiently. It's safe. The Thorol used it ourselves, but it would make you something not quite entirely human anymore. The ethical debates that followed lasted weeks. Changing human biology to fight an alien threat felt like losing something fundamental, but the alternative was facing the devourers with inadequate defenses. In the end, volunteers made the choice for themselves. Paolo was the first, arguing that soldiers had always sacrificed their bodies for the mission. Amara followed, wanting to connect more deeply with Thorol knowledge systems. Others came after, young people mostly, willing to become something new to protect the world they loved. Rachel watched as her daughter Isabel, now 16, volunteered for the program. She tried to talk her out of it, but Isabel was determined. "You're helping save the world with science," Isabel said. "Let me help save it by being a pilot. This is what I can do, Mom. Let me do it." The neural enhancement process took weeks for each person. Suresh and the other Thorol guided human doctors through the procedures, adapting their technology to work with human physiology. The results were remarkable. Enhanced individuals could process information at speeds approaching Thorol levels. They could interface with the hybrid ships naturally, their thoughts translating directly to action. But they were changed. They thought faster, saw patterns more clearly, and found normal human conversation frustratingly slow. They were becoming something between human and Thorol, a new kind of being born from necessity. Isabel emerged from the process different but still herself. She could fly the hybrid fighters with skill that seemed impossible, her mind and the ship working as one system. Rachel was proud and terrified in equal measure. "I'm still me, Mom," Isabel assured her after a successful test flight. Just faster. The training program expanded. 200 volunteers became the first generation of enhanced pilots. They trained in simulators built from Thorol designs, practicing maneuvers that would kill unaugmented humans. The G-forces and acceleration would liquefy normal human bodies, but the enhanced pilots had been modified to withstand the stress. Meanwhile, the fabrication systems worked continuously, growing ships and weapons from raw materials. The nanomachines consumed metal, carbon, and silicon, reshaping matter into forms designed by Thorol engineers 12,000 years before. Suresh worked alongside Bernard, teaching him the deeper principles of their technology. She was surprised by how quickly he understood, how intuitively he grasped concepts that had taken the Thorol generations to develop. "Humans learn fast," she observed. "You've had barely a year with our technology and you're already improving on our designs." "We're good at war," Bernard replied. "We've had a lot of practice." The first orbital defense platform went online 9 months after Suresh's revival. It was built from a hybrid of human and Thorol technology, grown in space using fabricators launched from Earth. The station could detect threats at extreme ranges and engage them with energy weapons that human science was only beginning to understand. More platforms followed, forming a defensive grid around Earth. They were humanity's first line of defense against the threat that had destroyed an entire civilization. Whether they would be enough remained to be seen. Rachel stood with Suresh on the observation deck of the newly completed orbital station, looking down at Earth below. The planet looked peaceful from up here, blue and white and green, with no signs of the frantic preparation happening on its surface and in the space around it. "Your people are doing something remarkable," Suresh said quietly. "You're not running. You're not hiding." You're standing and fighting for your world. We learned that from you, Rachel replied. You tried to warn us even though it meant sacrificing yourself. That taught us something about courage. I hope it's enough, Suresh said. The Devourers are patient and thorough. They've consumed thousands of worlds. Earth is just one more meal to them. Then we'll give them indigestion, Rachel said with grim humor. Suresh's skin patterns shifted, and what Rachel had learned was the thoral equivalent of a smile. Yes, I think you will. The Deep Space Monitoring Station detected them at 3 a.m, Greenwich Mean Time. The alarm woke Rachel from restless sleep aboard the orbital defense platform Unity-1. She was at the command center within minutes, still pulling on her uniform jacket. 18 months had passed since Suresh awakened. 18 months of preparation, training, and desperate building. The defensive grid was incomplete. The fleet numbered only 200 ships. The enhanced pilot corps was still learning to work together. They weren't ready, but the Devourers had arrived anyway. Show me, Rachel commanded, taking her position at the central display. The tactical officer, Lieutenant Kim Park, brought up the sensor data. They appeared at the edge of the system, near the orbit of Neptune. 3 scout units moving toward the inner planets at 0.3 light speed. They'll reach Mars in approximately 48 hours. Rachel studied the images. The Devourers looked nothing like ships. They were geometric structures, constantly shifting and reconfiguring themselves, part machine and part something else. Each one was massive, larger than any spacecraft humanity had built before the Thoral technology. Has Suresh seen this yet? Rachel asked. She's on her way, Kim replied. Suresh arrived moments later, her 4 arms moving quickly to access her own control panel. She studied the sensor data in silence, her skin patterns fluctuating through colors Rachel had learned meant fear and determination. 3 scouts, Suresh confirmed. They're testing our defenses, analyzing the planet's composition and checking for resistance. The main swarm will follow if these scouts report Earth is vulnerable. How long until the main force arrives? Days, weeks at most. The scouts are transmitting continuously. Once they confirm Earth is a viable target, the swarm moves fast. Rachel opened communications to the other defense platforms and to the ground command centers. All stations, this is Unity-1. The situation we've been preparing for is now active. Devourer scouts have entered the system. Initiate Protocol Omega. Protocol Omega was the plan they had developed with Suresh's guidance. Let the scouts approach. Let them think Earth was defended only by primitive technology. Then spring the trap when they came within range of the advanced weapons. The waiting was terrible. 48 hours watching the scouts advance. Knowing that every minute brought them closer, the pilots prepared their ships. The weapons platforms charged their energy cells. The whole world held its breath, though most of Earth's population still didn't know what was coming. The public announcement had finally been made 3 months earlier. The existence of the Thoral, the threat of the Devourers, and the preparations for defense. As expected, there had been panic, denial, and chaos. But there had also been courage. People around the world volunteered for the defense forces, contributed resources, and chose to face the threat together rather than fall apart. Isabel was aboard her fighter, one of 200 ships positioned throughout the defensive grid. Rachel could see her daughter's ship on the tactical display. A small dot among many, she pushed down the fear every parent feels when their child faces danger. Isabel had made her choice. She was an adult now, enhanced and trained, and she had a right to fight for her world. The scouts reached Mars orbit and barely slowed. The Devourers showed no interest in the red planet. They wanted Earth with its abundant water, organic compounds, and complex ecosystem. Mars was just a dead rock to them. They're accelerating, Kim reported. They'll enter our engagement range in 6 hours. Suresh moved to stand beside Rachel. Your people are brave. I hope you know that. The Thoral ran when the Devourers came. We didn't even try to fight. We just fled and hoped to survive somewhere else. Humanity is choosing to stand. We don't have a choice, Rachel replied. This is our home. We can't run fast enough or far enough to escape. So we fight. That's what makes you remarkable, Suresh said quietly. That's why I think you might actually win. The 6 hours crawled past. Every system was checked and rechecked. Every pilot ran through their attack patterns one more time. Every weapons platform confirmed its targeting solutions. When the scouts crossed into the engagement zone, Paolo gave the order from the command ship Defender. All units weapons free. Show them what humanity can do. The hybrid fighters launched first, 200 ships moving in coordinated attack patterns that the Thorol had never imagined. Isabel's squadron came at the nearest scout from multiple angles, their ships moving in ways that seemed to violate physics. The neural interfaces let them react at speeds measured in milliseconds, turning and accelerating faster than any biological pilot should survive. The energy weapon struck the scout, designed specifically to disrupt the Devourer's self-replication process. The alien machine shuddered under the assault, parts of its structure breaking apart, but it adapted quickly, reconfiguring to absorb and deflect the energy. It's learning, Amara reported from her position aboard the analytical station. Her enhanced mind processed battle data faster than computers, looking for patterns and weaknesses. Each attack teaches it how to defend better. We need to vary our approach. The orbital platforms opened fire using different wavelengths and attack modes. The goal was to keep the Devourers off balance, never letting them fully adapt to any single strategy. It was a tactic humans had learned fighting each other, the constant evolution of warfare that the peaceful Thorol had never developed. The first scout was destroyed after 20 minutes of sustained assault. Its structure collapsed in on itself, unable to maintain cohesion under the varied attacks. But the other two scouts had learned from watching it die. They split up, moving in different directions, making themselves harder targets. "They're trying to flank us," Kim warned. "Let them," Paolo responded. Squadrons 3 and 7 engage Scout 2. Squadrons 4 and 8 take Scout 3. Everyone else is stay in defensive positions. Isabel's voice came through the communication system, calm despite the chaos. Squadron 4 following the target. Weapons charged and ready. Rachel watched her daughter's ship dance through space, working in perfect coordination with the other fighters. The neural enhancement made them move like they shared a single mind, anticipating each other's actions and responding instantly. The second scout tried to fight back, launching smaller machines that swarmed toward the human ships. These were the replicators, the basic units that consumed matter and made more of themselves. If even one reached Earth's surface, it could start an infestation that might be impossible to stop. Defensive pattern Gamma, Paolo ordered. Don't let any of them through. The fighters formed a barrier, destroying the replicator units before they could advance. The enhanced pilots saw the swarm as patterns to be disrupted, mathematical problems to be solved through precise action. Their weapons found targets with perfect accuracy, and none of the replicators made it past the defensive line. The second scout fell after 35 minutes. The third lasted almost an hour, learning and adapting with terrifying speed. But ultimately it shared the fate of the others. The human forces destroyed all 3 scouts, though not without cost. 15 fighters had taken damage, and 2 pilots were injured when their ship's shielding failed under sustained attack. But they had won. 3 Devourer scouts lay in ruins, drifting through space as inert metal fragments. Status report, Rachel requested, needing to know the full situation. All remaining ships report operational, Kim said. Defensive grid is intact. No replicator units breached our perimeter. The scouts are neutralized. Saresh studied the debris field through the sensors. They transmitted continuously during the fight. The main swarm knows everything these scouts learned. They know you can fight back. They know you have advanced technology. And they know you destroyed their scouts. Will that make them back off? Rachel asked, hoping but not really believing. No, Suresh said. It will make them send more, many more. The Devourers don't fear losses. They learn from them and adapt. What you did today will make the next battle harder. As if to confirm her words, new sensor readings began appearing on the displays. Not 3 scouts this time. Hundreds of contacts appearing at the system's edge. The main swarm had arrived, and it was massive beyond anything they had anticipated. How many? Paolo asked, his voice tight. I'm counting over 2,000 individual units, Kim reported. And more are still appearing. They're coming through faster than we can track them. Rachel felt ice in her chest. 200 ships against thousands of Devourers. The mathematics of the situation were brutal and clear. We can't fight that many, one of the junior officers said, voicing what everyone was thinking. We have to try, Rachel replied. Suresh, is there anything in the Thorol data that might help? Any weapon or strategy we haven't considered? Suresh's skin patterns showed deep thought. There might be one option. It's dangerous and theoretical. The Thorol never tested it because we never got the chance. But the scouts gave us something valuable. What? Data. We destroyed 3 scouts and monitored them closely during the battles. Amara, did you detect the coordination frequency they were using? Amara pulled up her analysis. Yes, there's a quantum entanglement signal connecting all the Devourer units. They're not individuals, they're more like cells of a larger organism, all connected through this frequency. Exactly, Suresh said. The scouts reported back to a central intelligence, probably a command unit at the heart of the swarm. If we could disrupt that connection, the Devourers would lose coordination. They'd become thousands of individual machines instead of one unified force, much easier to defeat. How do we disrupt it? Bernard asked, joining the conversation from the engineering section. We need to get close to the command unit and deploy an entanglement disruptor directly into its systems. The device would create interference across the entire frequency, breaking the connection. But getting close means penetrating deep into the swarm, past thousands of Devourer units. It's essentially a suicide mission. Silence filled the command center as everyone absorbed this information. I'll do it, Suresh said simply. This is my fault in a way. My people created the situation that led to this. Let me help fix it. No. Isabel's voice came through the communication system. She had been listening to the command channel. You're the last of your people, Suresh. You're too valuable to lose. This is our planet. Let us defend it, Isabel. No, Rachel said immediately. We'll find another way. There is no other way, Mom. You know that. Someone has to make this run, and it should be the pilots. We're fast enough, skilled enough, and we've been training for exactly this kind of impossible mission. Other voices joined in, other pilots volunteering. They were young, most of them, enhanced and trained, but still fundamentally human. Still capable of choosing courage over survival. Paulo made the decision. Squadron 4 will make the run. Isabel, you're in command. Pick your wing. Make it volunteers only. Isabel selected 5 other pilots, all of them friends who had trained together and trusted each other completely. 6 ships against a swarm of thousands. The mathematics were still brutal. Bernard worked frantically to prepare the disruptor device, building it from Thoral designs and human desperation. It would work in theory, but theory and practice had a lot of space between them for things to go wrong. The preparation took 12 hours. 12 hours while the Devourer swarm moved closer to Earth. The lead elements would reach Mars orbit within a day. After that, nothing would stop them from reaching Earth except the thin line of human defenders. Rachel spent some of those hours with Isabel, not talking about the mission, but about everything else. Memories of when Isabel was young, dreams about the future they might not get to see. Things a mother and daughter say to each other when they might not have another chance. I'm proud of you, Rachel said finally. Whatever happens, I want you to know that. I know, Mom. And I'm proud of you too. You helped make all this possible. The alliance with the Thoral, the defensive grid, everything. You gave us a chance to fight. Now let me take that chance. The attack began at dawn, Earth time. The main human fleet engaged the outer edge of the Devourer swarm, drawing attention and creating chaos. The 6 ships of Squadron 4 slipped through the confusion, moving too fast for the Devourers to track effectively. Rachel watched from Unity 1, her heart in her throat as her daughter flew deeper into the enemy formation. The neural interface let Isabel and her wing move like they were one entity, dodging attacks that came from every direction. 2 minutes to target, Isabel reported, her voice calm despite the impossible danger. The command unit appeared on sensors, a structure larger than any of the others positioned at the center of the swarm. It pulsed with energy, coordinating the thousands of Devourer units through quantum signals that moved faster than light. Squadron 4 closed in, their ships taking damage but still flying. They reached the command unit and Isabel prepared to deploy the disruptor. Then everything went wrong. The command unit had defenses they hadn't anticipated. Energy fields that disrupted their shields. Weapons that tracked too fast to dodge. 2 ships from Isabel's wing were destroyed instantly, their pilots dying before they could react. Pull back, Paulo ordered. Negative, Isabel replied. We're committed. If we leave now, we don't get another chance. She pushed her ship harder past its design limits, the neural interface letting her demand things from the craft that should have torn it apart. The other 3 surviving pilots formed a shield around her, sacrificing their ship's protection to keep her alive. Isabel reached the command unit's hull and deployed the disruptor. The device attached itself and began its work, sending cascading interference through the quantum frequency. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Throughout the swarm, Devourer units stopped coordinating. They began attacking each other in confusion, unable to distinguish friend from foe without the command network. "It's working," Amara shouted. "The swarm is fragmenting." But Isabel's ship was trapped, caught in the energy field near the command unit. She couldn't break free and her shields were failing. "Isabel, eject." Rachel screamed into the communication system. "Can't, Mom. The field is too strong. But it's okay. The disruptor is doing its job. Make sure it counts." The command unit exploded as its systems overloaded from the interference. The explosion consumed everything nearby, including Isabel's fighter. Rachel felt the world stop. The displays showed the tactical situation improving, the Devourers losing cohesion, the battle turning in humanity's favor. But she couldn't see any of it. She could only see the empty space where her daughter's ship had been. Then a voice came through the communication system. Weak, but alive. "Unity 1. This is Squadron 4 Survivor. I'm still here. Shields failed, but the cockpit held. I'm drifting, but alive." It was Isabel. Injured, but alive. Paulo dispatched recovery ships immediately, and they pulled Isabel from the wreckage of her fighter. She had burns and broken bones, but she would survive. The battle continued for hours after that. But without coordination, the Devourer units were vulnerable. The human fleet destroyed them systematically, turning the invasion into a cleanup operation. By the time the sun set on Earth, the immediate threat was over. Thousands of Devourer units lay destroyed. The swarm was broken. Humanity had won its first real battle against the threat that had destroyed the Thorol, but everyone knew this was just the beginning. The Devourers were vast, spread across the galaxy. More would come eventually. Humanity would have to stay vigilant, keep building defenses, keep preparing for the next fight. Rachel held Isabel in the medical bay, relief and grief mixing together. They had won, but the cost had been high. 17 pilots dead, including 3 from Isabel's wing who had sacrificed themselves to let her complete the mission. Suresh stood nearby, her skin patterns showing complex emotions. "Your daughter saved this world," she said quietly. "She and those who flew with her did what the Thorol could never do. They faced the Devourers and won. Will more come?" Rachel asked. "Probably. But now you know you can fight them. Now you know you can win. That's more than my people ever achieved." Rachel looked at her daughter, sleeping peacefully with medical equipment monitoring her recovery. Isabel would heal. Humanity would rebuild, and they would be ready for whatever came next. The Thorol had left them a warning, but humanity had given that warning teeth. The galaxy had underestimated them. It wouldn't make that mistake again. 5 years after the battle, Rachel stood at the memorial site on Unity Station. The wall displayed names of everyone who had died defending Earth from the Devourer invasion. Human names and Thorol names mixed together, all of them honored equally. 17 pilots, 23 station personnel, and the 3 Thorol who had given their lives teaching humanity how to survive. Suresh approached from behind, moving quietly in the low gravity of the rotating station. She had recovered physically from those desperate months, but Rachel knew the emotional scars remained. Suresh was the last Thorol in this part of the galaxy, the final living connection to a civilization that had spanned dozens of worlds. "You come here often," Suresh observed. It wasn't a question. "Every week," Rachel admitted. "I need to remember what we almost lost, what we might still lose if we stop being vigilant." The memorial chamber looked out through a large window toward Earth. The planet hung in space like a blue and white jewel, peaceful and beautiful. From here, you couldn't see the orbital defense platforms that now numbered in the hundreds. You couldn't see the fleet of hybrid ships that patrolled the system constantly. You couldn't see the changes that 5 years had brought to human civilization, but they were there. Humanity had transformed itself, taking the warning and the gift that the Thorol provided and building something new from both. "I have news," Suresh said. "The Deep Space Monitoring Network detected a signal. It's old, very old, but it's Thorol. One of the refugee ships that escaped when our homeworld fell. They're out there, Rachel. My people survived." Rachel turned to her friend, seeing hope and fear mixing in Suresh's skin patterns. "Where?" "Far, incredibly far. They settled a planet in the outer arm, almost 3,000 light-years from here. The signal is a repeating message, identifying themselves and their location. They've been broadcasting it for thousands of years, hoping someone would hear. Can we reach them?" Not with current technology. Even with our fastest ships, the journey would take decades. But now we know they exist. Now we know the Thorol didn't completely die when our homeworld fell. That means something, Rachel. That means hope. They stood together in silence, looking at Earth and thinking about the strange path that had brought them to this moment. A crashed ship 12,000 years ago, a desperate warning from a dying scientist, and the unlikely friendship between species that had saved both their peoples from extinction. The door to the memorial chamber opened, and Isabel entered. She walked with a slight limp now, a permanent reminder of the injuries she had sustained 5 years ago. The scars on her arms showed where the fighter's cockpit had burned. But she was alive, and she had returned to active duty as soon as the doctors cleared her. "Mom, Suresh, we have visitors," Isabel said. "You both need to see this." They followed her to the main observation deck where a crowd had gathered. Bernard was there, looking excited. Amara stood next to him, her enhanced mind clearly processing something significant. Paolo had brought his command staff. Even Adrian had traveled up from Earth for this moment. Through the large windows, they could see ships approaching. Not human ships, not Thorol ships. Something different. Designs that neither species recognized. They appeared at the edge of the system an hour ago, Bernard explained. They're transmitting in multiple languages, including Thorol and some early human dialects. They're responding to the beacon network we established. The beacon network had been Rachel's idea, built over the past 5 years using Thorol technology and human determination. They had placed transmitters throughout the solar system, broadcasting on frequencies the Thorol had used to communicate across space. The message was simple. This is Earth, humanity survives. The Thorol live. If you can hear this, you are not alone. It was a message of hope sent into the darkness, never knowing if anyone would hear or respond. Now, apparently, someone had. The alien ships moved closer, their hulls decorated with symbols that looked organic, as if grown rather than painted. There were 7 vessels, each one different from the others, suggesting a species that valued individual expression over uniformity. A communication request came through, and Adrian accepted it. The screen flickered, then showed a face that was neither human nor Thorol, but somehow familiar in its basic structure. 2 eyes, a mouth, features that suggested intelligence and curiosity. The being spoke in a language that the translation computers struggled with at first. Then Amara's enhanced mind found the patterns and helped the system adjust. Words formed, understandable if slightly strange. "We are the Kethrin," the alien said. "We heard your beacon. We heard the Thorol name spoken after so long in silence. We thought they were lost when the Devourers consumed their worlds." "You are the humans they tried to warn?" Rachel stepped forward. "Yes, the Thorol came to Earth 12,000 years ago. They crashed but left us their knowledge. We found them. We learned from them and we survived the Devourer attack. One Thorol still lives with us." The Kethrin's expression changed in a way that might have been surprise. "One survived? After so long? This is remarkable. We would like to meet this Thorol, and we have much to share with you. We are survivors as well, humans. The Devourers came to our world 80 years ago. We fought them and won, barely. We have been searching for others who survived, building a network of resistance. You are the first ones we have found." Over the next several hours, the Kethrin shared their story. They were from a world 15 light-years away, a species that had developed technology independently and then faced the Devourer threat. Like humanity, they had been unprepared. Like humanity, they had chosen to fight rather than flee. And like humanity, they had won through courage and sacrifice. "The Devourers are weakening," the Kethrin commander explained. She called herself Vrith, and she spoke with the authority of someone who had seen combat. "We've encountered 3 other species who survived attacks. Each time the Devourers are less coordinated, less effective. We believe the machines are degrading, losing efficiency after thousands of years of operation. They're still dangerous, but they can be beaten." "How many Devourer swarms are still active?" Paolo asked. "We don't know for certain. Dozens, perhaps hundreds. But they're spread across the galaxy, and they take years to travel between systems. If we work together, share technology and tactics, we can defend ourselves. More than that, we can start hunting them, destroying swarms before they reach inhabited worlds." The implications were staggering. Humanity had thought they were alone in their fight against an overwhelming threat. But they weren't alone. Other species had survived. Other civilizations had fought and won. Together, they might actually have a chance not just to survive but to thrive. Suresh met with the Kethrin privately, and Rachel watched through the observation window as the last Thorol spoke with representatives of a species she had never known existed. They talked for hours, sharing knowledge about the Devourers and strategies for resistance. When Suresh emerged, her skin patterns showed emotions Rachel had never seen before. Something like joy mixed with grief, hope mixed with loss. They knew of the Thorol, Suresh said quietly, not personally but through records and ruins they found on abandoned worlds. The Devourers left some of our structures standing when they moved on. The Kethrin have been collecting our stories, preserving what they can of civilizations that fell. They have art from my homeworld, Rachel, images and music and literature that I thought was lost forever. My people are remembered even though we're gone. You're not gone, Rachel said firmly. You're standing right here, and somewhere 3,000 light years away more of your people are alive. The Thorol survived, Sarish, different and scattered and changed but alive. The weeks that followed brought more visitors. The Kethrin had sent out messages through their own network, and other survivor species began arriving at Earth. The Heln, who had lost 3 worlds to the Devourers before finding a way to fight back. The Koresh, who had defeated a swarm through massive coordinated sacrifices. The Rovan, who had literally moved their entire civilization to a new planet to escape, then returned to their homeworld to reclaim it. Each species brought knowledge, technology, and tactics. Each had found different solutions to the same problem. Together they began building something unprecedented, an alliance of survivors, species working together to defend against a common threat. Bernard found himself heading a joint engineering council, combining technologies from 7 different civilizations. The results were remarkable. Shields that were stronger than any single species could build, weapons that adapted to enemy defenses using principles no one had discovered alone, ships that combined the best ideas from multiple worlds. Amara led the communication efforts, her enhanced mind able to process the linguistic and cultural complexities of dealing with multiple species. She became a bridge, helping different civilizations understand each other not just in language but in thought patterns and values. Paolo trained the combined defense forces, taking soldiers from multiple species and teaching them to work together. The military tactics that emerged were hybrid creations, blending human aggression with Kethrin strategy and Helm discipline. Isabel flew missions with pilots from other worlds, learning from them and teaching them in return. The enhanced human pilots were valued for their speed and adaptability. The Kethrin pilots brought centuries of combat experience. The Helm had incredible patience and precision. Together, they formed squadrons more effective than any single species could field. 2 years after first contact with the Kethrin, the Alliance launched its first offensive operation. Long-range scouts had detected a Devourer swarm moving toward an uninhabited system. Rather than wait for it to reach a populated world, the Alliance fleet intercepted it in deep space. The battle lasted 3 days. 50 ships from 6 different species fought in coordinated patterns, using tactics developed through the shared knowledge of the Alliance. The Devourer swarm was larger than the one that had attacked Earth, but the combined fleet was ready for it. They won decisively, destroying every Devourer unit without losing a single ship. It was the first time any civilization had achieved a victory without casualties, and it proved what the Alliance could do when working together. The success led to more aggressive planning. If they could hunt and destroy Devourer swarms before they reached populated worlds, they could protect not just themselves, but every developing civilization in the galaxy. It was a mission that would take generations, but it was possible. Rachel watched as Earth transformed from a protected world to a hub of interstellar cooperation. The planet became a meeting place where different species gathered to share knowledge and coordinate defense. Human cities grew upward and outward, accommodating visitors from across the stars. The cultural exchange went both ways. Humans learned Kethrin philosophy, Helm mathematics, and Koresh art. In return, they shared their own music, literature, and ideas. The species were different, but they found common ground in their shared experiences and their determination to survive. Suresh became a symbol of the Alliance. The last Thorol who had sacrificed everything to warn a single developing world, only to see that world become the catalyst for a galactic resistance movement. She traveled between worlds teaching and learning, honored by species she had never met. I never imagined this, Sarish told Rachel during one of their regular conversations. They still met weekly at the memorial, keeping their tradition alive. When I entered that stasis pod 12,000 years ago, I thought I was failing. I thought my mission was lost, my people were doomed, and my warning would never be heard. But it was heard, Rachel said. And it mattered more than you ever imagined. You saved Earth, then Earth helped save others. Your warning echoed across the stars, Sarish. The Thoral's final gift to the galaxy wasn't just technology or knowledge. It was hope. 5 more years passed in a blur of activity. The Alliance grew to include 17 species. The combined fleet numbered in the thousands. The devourer swarms were being systematically hunted and destroyed. What had once seemed like an unstoppable threat was becoming manageable. New colonies were established on worlds the devourers had stripped bare decades or centuries earlier. Life returned to dead planets, brought by species working together to restore what the machines had destroyed. It was slow work, but it was possible. Isabel, now in her 30s, commanded one of the exploration vessels searching for more survivor species. She had grown from a teenager volunteering for a desperate mission into a leader helping coordinate humanity's role in the Alliance. Her neural enhancements had become normal, with thousands of humans now choosing augmentation to better interact with alien technology and thinking. Bernard's innovations in hybrid technology had revolutionized space travel for multiple species. Ships that once took months to cross the void now made the journey in weeks. The galaxy was becoming smaller, more connected, more unified. Amara discovered that the devourers had left behind traces of the civilization that created them. Deep in their degraded programming were references to the long-dead species that had built them as terraforming machines. The Alliance was slowly decoding this information, learning about the civilization whose mistakes had threatened the entire galaxy. It gave them hope that maybe, someday they could fully disable the Devourer programming, turn the machines from destroyers into what they were originally meant to be, helpers in making dead worlds livable. It was a distant goal, but one worth working toward. On the 10th anniversary of the battle that saved Earth, the Alliance held a gathering on Unity Station. Representatives from 23 species came together, sharing stories and honoring those who had died in the long struggle against the Devourers. Rachel stood before the memorial wall, reading the names as she had done every week for a decade, but now there were new names added. Kethrin warriors, Helm defenders, Kuresh volunteers, heroes from dozens of worlds, all fighting for the same cause. Sarish joined her as always. The Thoral looked older now, though her species aged differently than humans. The years had marked her, but they had also given her something back. Purpose, community, a future she had thought lost forever. The refugee Thoral sent a message, Sarish said. They're building faster ships using designs we shared with them. In another 20 years, they might be able to make the journey here. I could meet my people again, Rachel. After 12,000 years, I could go home. Will you? Rachel asked. Go with them, I mean. Sarish was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. Earth has become my home in many ways. You humans gave me a reason to keep living when I had lost everything else. The alliance we built together, it's more important than my personal desires. I think I'm needed here, at least for now. You're always welcome here, Rachel assured her. But if you decide to go, we'll understand. You've earned the right to choose your own path. They watched Earth through the window, seeing the lights of cities glowing on the night side. Starships from a dozen different species moved through orbit, coming and going on missions of exploration, defense, and cooperation. The planet that had once been isolated and alone was now a hub connecting hundreds of worlds. I've been thinking about what to say at the memorial service, Sarish said. I want to honor the Thoral who died trying to warn Earth, and all the others who died fighting the Devourers. But I also want to celebrate what came from their sacrifice. We lost so much, but we built something beautiful from the loss. You could tell them what you told me once, Rachel suggested, about how humans named you Last Light, as if you were an ending. Sarish's skin pattern shifted into what Rachel recognized as a smile. But I was a beginning, for all of us. The memorial service began an hour later. Thousands attended, both in person and through holographic links from across the Alliance. Representatives from each species spoke about their losses and their hopes. Soldiers described battles. Scientists shared discoveries. Artists presented works inspired by the cooperation between species. When Suresh stepped forward to speak, silence fell across the gathering. The last Thorol, survivor of an ancient tragedy, symbol of hope for the present and future. "I am Suresh," she began, her voice translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. 12,000 years ago, I entered a stasis pod believing I had failed my mission. I woke to find my people gone, my world lost, everything I knew turned to dust. But I also found something I never expected. I found allies. I found friends. I found humans who listened to a warning from the past and chose to face an impossible threat with courage. She paused, looking out at the diverse crowd. Humans, Catherine, Helm, and so many others all gathered together. The Devourers took my homeworld. They scattered my people. They wanted to take Earth too and all your worlds. But they failed because we refused to let them win. Every species here has lost something to the Devourers. Every species here has fought and bled and sacrificed. But we survived, and more than that, we found each other. The Thorol came to Earth to give a warning. But humanity gave us something back. They gave us hope. They showed us that loss doesn't have to be the end of the story. They showed us that different species can work together, can become something greater than the sum of their parts. They gave the galaxy a second chance. When humans first found my ship, they named me Last Light. They thought I was the end of the Thorol civilization, the final survivor of a dead species. But they were wrong. I wasn't an ending. I was a beginning. A beginning of an alliance that spans the stars. A beginning of cooperation that makes us all stronger. A beginning of hope that the galaxy can heal from the wounds the Devourers inflicted. So today, as we remember those who died, let us also celebrate what they gave us. They gave us the chance to build this future together. They gave us the strength to face our fears and win. They gave us each other. The Devourers wanted to destroy everything living. Instead, they gave us a reason to unite. They gave us a common cause. They gave us the opportunity to prove that life, in all its beautiful diversity, is stronger than any machine. That is the legacy of the Thorol who died trying to reach Earth. That is the legacy of every human who fought in that first desperate battle. That is the legacy of all the defenders from all our worlds who gave everything to protect what they loved. We are not ending. We are beginning. And the light we carry together will shine across the galaxy for generations to come. The applause that followed was thunderous, a sound made by hands and appendages and structures from 23 different species, all expressing the same emotion in their own ways. Rachel stood next to Isabel, both of them crying openly. They had lost so much in the long struggle, but they had gained something too. A future where humanity wasn't alone, a galaxy where cooperation was possible, a hope that life would endure. As the gathering dispersed, Rachel returned to the memorial wall one last time. She placed her hand on the names inscribed there, feeling the smooth surface beneath her palm. "Thank you," she whispered to the dead, "for warning us, for fighting for us, for giving us the chance to become who we needed to be." Outside the window, ships from across the Alliance were launching on new missions. Some would explore unknown regions, others would hunt remaining devourer swarms. Still others would establish new colonies and make contact with developing civilizations who might need warning and help. The work would continue for generations. The threat wasn't completely eliminated. There was still so much to do, so many challenges to face, but they would face them together, humans and Thorol and all the other species who had chosen to stand against the darkness. They would protect each other, learn from each other, and build a future that honored the sacrifices of the past. Rachel took one last look at Earth, beautiful and precious and protected. Then she turned away from the window and went to find Suresh. They had work to do, plans to make, and a galaxy to defend. The story that began 12,000 years ago with a crash in the deep ocean had become something far greater than anyone could have imagined. It had become a story about survival, friendship, and the incredible things that different species could accomplish when they worked together. It had become a story about hope, and that story was just beginning.